Chris Howard, I resign.
You can't resign.
We haven't done it yet. At least record it first.
I just have.
Hey, party people. We can, like, when you're gone, we'll still say it. Hey, party people, 012 here.
Hey, party people, over here. What would you do if I told you that you don't have any ticket? You don't have a ticket for Wednesday then?
I'd unfollow you.
Hey party people, 012 here and welcome to the 16th Suburban Gooner podcast. A number of our missing Welshmen, and before that a number of some crazy French guy called Flamini. This week we've got both Kris and Ben. How you doing, guys? That's you, Chris Howard.
I told you I wanted to be referred to as Carl for the duration of this podcast.
You're not being
It's not
called
happening. It's not happening.
You're being called Howard. And the reason we have to call Howard something else is because we have a special guest, also called Kris, but he's a nicer guy. Kris Carpenter, aka AFC Freddy 8. How you doing, Kris?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure.
So let's start straight away with the Liverpool game. First off, I didn't make an apology last time after the 5-1, but Luke was on here and we were going to make a joint apology. Basically, what happened is I didn't go to the last game at the Emirates, therefore I didn't have my stickers to stick in before the 5-1. And we got beat. Luckily enough, I had my stickers this time and we beat them. So that's scientifically proven that the stickers work. So, speaking of the result, and this is going to Kris, not you, Howard. What did you think?
I was really pleased, to be honest. I was a little bit worried, if I'm honest, before the game. Just kind of looking at the result on what happened to us on Saturday, I suppose there was always going to be a little bit of that in the mind. I thought we kind of started a little bit edgy. The tempo was a lot better, but the way that they came at us, that first sort of 5-10 minutes was really important to get through that. Once we started controlling the game, really felt confident that we were going to see it out, even at 2-1 when they were coming at us quite strong. And yeah, I was really, really pleased that we got the result. And in the circumstances, dare I say, I was even more pleased because he didn't get what he wanted. And we all know who I'm referring to when I say he. So, really, really pleased. It was a really good performance.
When you say you were worried, Kris, is that before or after you saw the team sheet?
I think anyone that sort of knows me from my my happenings and speeches on Twitter, I'm quite a positive person, and generally, even when the teams come out, I just sort of like to think of it as, well, it's an opportunity for those that are not getting games to step up. I must admit, when I saw Sonogo ahead of Bentner, I was a little bit surprised at that, because I thought, however sort of annoying and frustrating certain Mr. Bentner can be, I thought he'd earned a start, so I was surprised to see Sonogo start. But the rest of the team, I was fairly confident, really. And the way we started, the nerves really came from that result at Anfield rather than the team, for me anyway.
How about you, Ben?
Yeah, just to echo really what Kris said, I think we'd all agree that we rode our luck for sort of the majority of the game. Obviously, we played very well. But Liverpool could have, again, as it was the other week, they could have gone sort of 2-3-0 up in the opening moments. But I think we were very lucky that Daniel Sturridge's bobbins. So I think he actually saved us sort of blessings there. But as you mentioned, Sonogo, Ozil, I imagine we'll go into more depth in these people later, but it was promising. It was a change of style. It was more ballsy. It was exactly what we wanted to see after the murder at Anfield and then the United game where we sort of got back on track. But yeah, it's just fantastic to be into the next round and got Everton. I was almost slightly disappointed. I was kind of hoping for there's no easy game, but almost an easier opponent than Everton, but you get what you get, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, if we do it, we're certainly going to have to do it the hard way, aren't we?
Mm.
And Mr. Howard, what did you think?
I want to be referred to as Carl. I couldn't actually give a horde of bloodthirsty Capuchin monkeys what the actual game was like. I think the most important thing was the result, wasn't it, really? I mean, after last week, we needed to lay some demons to rest. And it didn't really matter that we were, under the cosh for the first 5-10 minutes or so. We just had to ride that storm. We knew Liverpool were going to do that. And like you, Ben, similarly, I was a bit disappointed that that we got Everton in the next round. I mean, that would be 3. I think it was Darren Arsenal said that would be 3 out of the top 6 that we'll have played on our FA Cup run, and you don't get that until you get to the latter stages usually. So a little bit unlucky, but the most important thing here was a victory. Lay the demons to rest, and move on. You know, we've not been playing amazingly well at the moment, but grinding out results seems to be the flavour at the moment. So happy to just be carrying on doing that.
Before we go into kind of the players in more details, we've obviously already spoke about he who shall not be named. And obviously it was quite funny, the fact that he's trying to play these mind games, Chelsea lose and Arsenal win. But what did you guys think of Wenger's response after the game? I'll go to you first, Ben.
It was classic Arsenal, wasn't it? It was very to be honest, I've tried to ignore the whole thing because I just think it's utterly ridiculous, and that's kind of what he wants us to do, is get involved in it. But Arsenal just shut it down, and you did feel, as he sort of was coming out with what did he say? It was silly and embarrassing for him and Chelsea, and it was quite awkward, wasn't it? Even I sort of went, "Oh God, I hope Mourinho's not watching this." But yeah,
the thing is, he's got a point. He's got a point because Arsene Wenger was asked a question about other teams. They didn't specifically say, "Do you think Chelsea are running scared?" Or they didn't make any comments like that in the press conference. It was, "Why do you think?" I think the line of questioning was, "Why do you think other teams are playing down their chances?" And he answered, as he always does, in a straight and non. It wasn't his response wasn't. It didn't have any undertones of any kind of snide remark. It was, I'm giving you an answer. Maybe it's because there's an element of fear in these other teams. So what usually then happens is Journo picks up a soundbite, fear from other teams. Journo goes to Jose Mourinho's conference and says, Arsene Wenger said all the other teams in the title race have got fear. And Jose, without actually thinking, maybe I should actually check this before believing what a journalist says, bites. And so I just think it was a bit pathetic, really. The whole situation was a bit pathetic, and I'm quite glad, like you said, Ben, that he just shut it down. And I'd like to think that this is all going to be over, but you just know it won't be. As soon as Jose gets another mic thrust in front of him, he's going to be Mr. Chirpy again, isn't he? What do you reckon, Kris?
I'd echo a lot of your points, really. I think Arsene acted in the way that Arsene always does, and that's with class and with dignity. And the thing, I think, if you look over his tenure and you look over the years he's been with us, there's been the odd isolated incident with people. I mean, we all think back to the incident with Pardew. I mean, that's completely justified in my book anyway, because it's Pardew. But I think with Arsene, he's too experienced. He's been in the game too long to know that responding to comments from a guy who's, I think, masking his own failings by coming out with these comments. He knows that City are the stronger team in the league, and he knows that we've got equally as much chance of City as bypassing Chelsea. And I think his quote fear of failure that he labels Arsene, I think the truth behind that statement is that he's afraid to fail with the money he's got, with the squad he's got. And you only have to look at him moaning about his strikers again, saying, I can't comment on that. It's all just a smokescreen to deflect the attention from his own team. And whilst, I understand why players do that, Arsene does it in a very different way, i.e., didn't see incidents. Players have a little bit of a niggle sort of thing. These are the little comments that he comes out with to deflect the attention away. What he doesn't do is go to town on another manager and disrespect a fellow professional, which, let's be honest, in any other line of work wouldn't be tolerated. It's only because Jose is this media darling that they fawn all over him that he's allowed to get away with it. And if he does that, if a player does that in the press, he gets charged with bringing the game into disrepute. Yet Jose can do it time and time again. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I'd echo what kind of Ben said. I've been trying to ignore a lot of it, but then when Wenger said that, I just thought it was great. Just kind of shut him up, hopefully. But they did ask Wenger, didn't they? Do you think that'll be the last word? And I think Wenger said, I don't think there'll ever be a last word.
Yeah.
Because that is the type of guy that Mourinho is. I don't know if you guys saw. I think it was Stokes actually that put on Twitter, and it was, when they were doing all the, roses are red or Arsenal are red and Chelsea are blue. I think he put one up. It said, Arsene is red, Mourinho is blue. One manages Arsenal, the other is a magnificent CUNT.
Vintage.
Love it.
And I just thought that was brilliant. Absolutely.
Tip of the hat to _armchair Gooner there.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely. So going back to the game then, and actual real football things, who was your standout performer, Kris?
On the day, I suppose it's obvious, but Lukasz Fabianski was superb. I think I tweeted last night, which was I was even impressed with my own tweet for once, which is rare. But I think I was right when I said that Fabianski's form, in my opinion, is what's driving Szczesny to be the keeper that he is this season.
Yeah.
When you know that you've got a keeper that's clearly improved to the level that Fabianski has. Let's not forget he's played a couple of games this season, albeit cup games, and he's looked steady in all of them. As far as I remember, has made at least one big save in every game he's played. I think he's driving Szczesny on. And yesterday, there was one incident towards the end of the game, the Aga header, when he came and missed that cross. Barring that, everything was exceptional. Even down to the thing that I don't think a lot of people picked up on. There was an incident when Sturridge went through on him. I think it was the first occasion he went through. I think 9 times out of 10, you would have seen a Brad Guzan at Anfield style. Keeper comes out, clatters, man goes down, and it's a blatant penalty. If you watch Fabianski's movement, he comes to the ball, realises he's not going to get there, and just drives Sturridge that fraction wider. And that fraction means the ball goes wide. Sturridge should still have scored, don't get me wrong, but I think even the judgment that he has there was superb. And also, he's playing. He's got people like Mertesacker and Koscielny again stood out for me yesterday. That back line was really strong, and I worried when Monreal got the early booking. I thought, oh, here we go. When you've got Jenks on the other side, you've always got a concern. But when you've got a keeper playing that well, yeah, I thought he was the standout player. Just briefly, I would also touch on Ozil. Again, I thought was quality. Everything he did and everything he does, it just seems to be effortless, and that's why I think some people think he maybe isn't, on form or whatever you want to call it. And as we mentioned before, Sonogo as well for a raw first start for a lad who really hasn't had any football at all. Let's be honest. I thought he really stepped up and gave us a glimpse of what he might be in the future.
Yeah, let's hope so. And I agree with the Szczesny thing. Since he was dropped, that's when his form's really kind of spiraled upwards, isn't it? So he needs to know he's challenged. So it'll be interesting to see what we do with goalkeepers actually, because obviously Viviano's on loan and Fabianski's off, isn't he? So
yeah, and there's a reason why. Sorry to butt in. There's a reason why. That Viviano has not got game time. Viviano, you would think logically would be the man that Wenger would turn to if he knows that Fabianski's going to move on. You would imagine Wenger would say, "Well, he's moving on. I'll blood this new goalkeeper." There's obviously a reason that he's favouring Fabianski, and if the form is that good in training and he's pushing Szczesny that hard, you feel for Viviano a bit. But clearly Fabianski is the better goalkeeper at the moment, and there's obviously a reason behind that.
How about you, Carl?
I think it's going to pose a really interesting situation in the summer, because Arsene Wenger's going to have to go out and get a keeper, because we're going to lose 2, because Viviano's not going to stick around, and he's going to have to find one of sufficient quality to push Szczesny, because if he goes out and buys a youngster, then we could have the same situation in that Szczesny's not pushed and he's not performing at the highest level. And if he goes out and buys someone who's almost too close, I don't know. It's going to be a really, 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 really interesting battle, or an interesting decision that Arsenal's going to have to make in the summer. I think in terms of yesterday's game, I actually would find it's a bit of a strange one, because I'm thinking what players really stood out, and they all kind of stood out. And then I think, well, did we play that amazingly? And I didn't think it was one of those games where we were absolutely scintillating. But if I go through the team, Fabianski, really, really good game, as Kris said. Jenkinson, I thought, performed really, really well. Nacho Monreal had a couple of wobbly moments at the start, but he grew into the game. Mertesacker and Koscielny, you look at that back four, and one silly Lukasz Podolski challenge aside, and that's a clean sheet that they've got.
Yeah.
In midfield, Arteta and Flamini, I thought, worked really, really well. They covered a lot of ground, and Arteta was doing quite a lot of pressing further up the pitch particularly after the first 20 minutes when Gerrard was losing the ball. I mean, I was saying it in commentary, but because I obviously didn't go to the game, unfortunately, I was surrounded by a pack of Liverpool fans, Southern Liverpool fans, in an Uxbridge pub, which wasn't nice. But they were saying in commentary how Arteta was pushing forward, and I thought he started off a little bit shaky, but he played well. He then moved to the three that sit behind Sonogo. Sonogo obviously played well, held the ball up. Needs a bit more composure, but that will come with games.
Yeah.
Podolski had a good game. Ox was brilliant, and Ozil was brilliant again. So I'm actually struggling to work out who was a weaker link in our team yesterday. Yet it wasn't an amazing performance, if that makes sense. Ben?
Yeah, no, that's bang on. I think, to be honest, everyone sort of performed at sort of like a 7, if that even makes sense. Because when you touched on Arteta and Flamini, that was interesting because because we haven't seen them together that much. But as you said, it was interesting that Flamini was almost used as like the last line of defence, and Arteta had the freedom to sort of press aggressively. And I think, in the grand scheme of things, he hasn't had a great season, and he seemed almost relaxed last night. That he didn't have the pressure of having to be that last man. I think that's why we actually saw a much better Arteta than we have done in recent weeks. Sonogo, you mentioned as well, like almost a bit controversial, but in the grand scheme of things, his performance wasn't that much different to what Giroud actually offers, does it? Obviously, apart from his technical, Giroud is obviously greater technically, but the work rate, the effort. But Giroud is normally almost like a fixed reference, whereas Sonogo had a lot more mobility. And obviously, there was that funny moment where he sort of Ozil chips the ball over to him and he breaks on behind Agger and Skirtle and just completely air shots it.
Yeah.
And he trips. But they were sort of promising signs. They're things that Giroud doesn't have. And it was nice that he had the guts to make those sort of runs. And obviously, a lot of it was dictated by Ozil's passes. But no, it's fantastic to see a really sort of gutsy performance from him. And there was almost, because I was at home watching it as well, there was a point where Giroud, when he was bringing him on, you see Sonogo look over and he sees Giroud, and then instead of going, "Oh, that's me," and trotting off, he turns around as if to say, "No, that's not me, that's someone else coming off." So he almost had like a nice sort of bit of confidence about him, which I quite like. So it was very promising from him, wasn't it? Considering that, as Kris said earlier, that he was sort of a bit dubious when he saw his name, but Arsenal's been vindicated again, hasn't he, with one of his young starlets.
Can I ask a question? I'll ask it to all of you. I'm going to start with Steve, though. How much an impact do you think rotation actually played in terms of the players being freshness, given how leggy we looked against Man United?
I suppose we'll never know, but yeah, we did look tired against Man United, so it was good to freshen things up. But even if you think, Arteta's looked tired, he had 2 days training, had to come into the team and has played every game since. But even him, towards the end of the game, he was still pressing. He was kind of doing some of the Giroud work that you usually see him. He's pushing their defenders and stuff. So I suppose if you've got a team around that are fresher, that definitely helps. And, they've got a point to prove. And I suppose it's nice to think that the FA Cup still means something as well to those players that came in. Podolski worked hard as well, which was good. That one silly tackle aside, like we say. It's a shame that happened, but he took his goal well on his right foot as well. So yeah, I think by the looks of it, it made an impact, but we'll never really know, will we?
Yeah. Kris?
Yeah, echo very similar points. I thought offensively was the key thing that we freshened up. The back four, speaking as a Sunday League defender myself, I think you can usually get away with it a bit more as a defender because your role is pretty much to defend. And the changing of the fullbacks is probably the area that you need most energy. So to keep the same centre backs was important. But freshening up offensively is what I thought was a real bonus. As we mentioned, the Man United game, as we've said previously, Giroud looked knackered. I mean, really knackered, and he ran himself into the ground. Sonogo was that little bit of fresh air, and he gave us that little bit of pace. The Ox, again, another one that was fresh. And also, if you look at the game at Anfield, I think most people looked at Arteta and said he looked knackered and needed a rest. Just having someone with Flamini's drive and bite and headlessness almost. Having somebody alongside him, like Flamini does, he is all action, and that frees up Arteta to play his natural game, and it means that Arteta doesn't have to do as much of the chasing as he would have had to do, like at Anfield when obviously Jack was getting kicked off the ball and really didn't get any time to control the ball, and Arteta was doing his running for him. So I thought Flamini was a really key bit of rotation that really freshened that up.
Benjamin?
I'm going to say sort of yes and no. I think the lineup we chose for the game just gone, I think it combated Liverpool better. I think Liverpool missing Henderson was massive for them because he's their sort of Ramsey character, whereas they had Allen, who isn't as mobile. Which, if they've got the set plan that they had, where they sort of have runners off the ball and Coutinho trying to find through balls, they didn't have that without Henderson. So we almost had a slight head start with that there. But with the players that we had on the pitch, it got the best out of others. We saw, as Kris has already mentioned, we had Ozil, drastic improvement, wasn't it? He was just unplayable. I don't know how else to describe him, really. And Podolski, we even saw a glimpse of the Podolski that we wanted to see, wasn't it? Like, we've mentioned this before, but he's one of the best one-touch players around. Like, the way he can sort of suddenly change his pace and his sort of darting movement. I don't know if you remember the goal against Montpellier in last year's Champions League, where he sort of zips the ball into Giroud's feet. Giroud, like, deftest touch over the fence, and he just darts, gets on the end of it, and absolutely belts it. And we saw that from the goal at the weekend. Obviously, it wasn't nothing to do with the build-up, but he's following the play. Ozil to Chamberlain back, and then all of a sudden he's come out of nowhere, and he puts that in with his right foot as well. So it's something that he doesn't use enough. But I think the lineup helped the players we had on the pitch play better, if that makes sense.
We were just talking about, obviously, Flamini being the last line of defence, and then we spoke about Sunday football as well there for a bit there, Kris. I've played defence as well in Sunday League, and we used to have a defensive centre midfielder who ended up playing as like a third centre-back, and you'd have to pull him up and say, come on, you're keeping people onside here. Gerrard was almost doing that yesterday. There were times where he was in line with Agger and Skirtel, and it's kind of his full. I mean, he's still doing okay, to be fair for him, captain of Liverpool, but his fall from what he has, that's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, and he was lucky to stay on the pitch, actually, as well.
Very.
Now that we've done that, obviously we're about 20-25 minutes in now, lads, so we'll move on to the midweek game.
Who plays?
Just the small.
Just been talking about rotation.
Yeah. So not a tough game at all. What team would you field, Kris?
It's a nice, easy one, isn't it? So stick out the reserves and see how we get on. It's a really difficult one, isn't it? I've listened to a lot of different opinions throughout sort of social media and whatnot today, and I'm trying to get it clear in my own head. The one sort of dilemma, I think the back four picks itself, and obviously the goalkeeper, despite Fabianski's brilliant game, I think obviously Szczesny comes back in, and then obviously the back four, as we said, picks itself. And for the record, I would have Gibbs over Monreal for that game. Yep. I think in front of that is where you've got your issue. For me, Flamini has to play, irrespective of Arteta and Jack's fitness. That maybe is one of the questions. Do you put Jack over Arteta, or do you sort of set up?
Suspended.
Oh, he is. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Okay, well then that picks itself in that case. The one real bone of contention is has the Ox played himself into a starting lineup, and I think based upon yesterday, I think he probably has. Obviously, I don't know if you noticed. I'm sure you did. Thomas Rosicky was left out completely yesterday, with a view, I would imagine, to him playing against Bayern. I'm just wondering if with the way Chamberlain played yesterday, and in particular that burst of pace that we don't have when Theo's not around, that he gives us. I'm just wondering if maybe he'll get the nod over another to start the game. And also, it really depends on Wenger's strategy. I mean, is he going to look to learn from last year and try and sort of keep it tight and just get a tight 1-0 or even a 0-0? Or is he going to think we need to get goals and get in front before we go to the Bayern Arena? I don't think we're going to have the same sort of game away from home this year as we did last year. It was a fantastic result last year, don't get me wrong, but the bottom line is Bayern didn't have a lot to play for. And I think if that second goal that we got in that game had come a lot earlier, you'd have seen a different response to Bayern than what we got when we went over there. They kind of knew going into that second leg they'd won it. So I'm kind of leaning towards more that Wenger will probably go for Rosicky over Chamberlain just purely because he'll want to keep it tighter rather than offensive. But they're the only changes, and I think Giroud again comes in. The rest stays the same for me.
How about you, Ben?
Yeah, I can't argue with a word of that. Thinking Arsene Wenger for a second, I think he may go Thomas Rosicky because just out of the trust that he has for the player. Like, I made the silly mistake of actually watching Bayern's game on the weekend, and
So
they are ridiculous, and they had players rested. The way they can keep hold of the ball, it's sort of like downtime in games where they almost like teams let the opposition have the ball. They don't do that. Like, they just sort of keep the ball for like 90 minutes. It's utterly ridiculous. The way Guardiola has taken them to a whole new level he's just fantastic. But no, I don't know, and sort of the dark thoughts in the back of my head is just I can just see us getting absolutely tonked. I just hope that we can keep the score down. That's me being honest. So I think if we can keep the score down to maybe 2-1, 3-1, I think we've done really, really well.
We won't get tonked, Ben.
Are you sure?
Yes, absolutely. Genuinely, I genuinely believe we won't get tonked.
Is that you being brave? Or is that heart or head?
Probably a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. We've built a defensive solidity this season, which is something that I haven't seen since the 90s. This is something. There's something different about this team. Bearing in mind what people were saying about Dortmund when we went out there, we had no chance. Dortmund always win those home games. We're going to be under the cosh, etc., etc., etc. But we kept them at arm's length the entire game. I know Dortmund and Bayern Munich are two very different propositions, but if we set up correctly, if we don't concede silly early goals, if we build from our patient play and build up, I think we could certainly. I believe that we could get a clean sheet out of it. I genuinely do. I don't think. Yeah, I do.
They've scored like 4 or 5 goals in their last sort of 10 games or something. Some ridiculous stat like that.
Yep, and
we went like
and we'd gone 10 games unbeaten, and then we got absolutely spannered at Anfield.
I'm inclined to agree with that.
Bayern Munich went 57,000 million bajillion games without losing at home at the Allianz Arena. Yeah. Nobody gave Arsenal a chance. We were battered for long parts of it, still won it 2-0. With that in mind, I genuinely believe that we've got a massive chance. I think you're right, Kris. I think we're not going to get the same result at the Allianz Arena. I think we need to go in with a goal or a 2-goal advantage. And it feels very much like the Pep Guardiola Barcelona years when they'd turn up at ours and we'd draw 2-2, or that year that we won 2-1, and we all kind of suspected and probably knew in our hearts that even 2-1 wasn't going to be enough. So, a 1-0 or a 2-0, it'd be great to get that. But, we're going to have to. It's going to be one of the toughest. It will be the toughest game we've had all season.
Just my worry is that they're going to do to us what they did to Man City, where they absolutely smashed them. And
bearing in mind, this was Man City they weren't at that time. They weren't playing that well. 6-3. Yeah, but they weren't playing that well at that time, were they? They were struggling when Bayern Munich played them. They weren't.
Yeah, that's a fair shout,
ripping teams. They weren't ripping teams apart. Joe Hart was just on the verge of getting dropped. There's mitigating circumstances. That's all I'm going to say.
What have you been drinking?
Yeah,
we need to be going in. Very brief for me. We need to be going into that second leg with a chance. That's the bottom line. I mean, we've had too many games. If you look at the Barcelona game, I hate to bring this up, but I'm sure we all remember that glorious night at the Emirates where we all had pretty flags and we were out from United within 20 minutes.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that's not the situation. If we go to Bayern one goal or less adrift, i.e. 0-0 or one behind at the very worst, then we've got every chance. If we're going back to Bayern with sort of like last year, a 3-1 reverse or a 2-0, or I think even a 2-1, we're in trouble because of the away goal. But I think we need to be going into that game with a clear chance of getting the result. And if we do that, I'm quietly confident we can get a 1-0. That's my personal opinion.
Oh.
Big statement.
That
I'm
is a
really
big
looking forward to
statement.
it, actually. I'm really, really looking. This is what it's all about, isn't it? Games.
Oh,
like
it's
this.
fantastic.
Absolutely.
Really looking forward to it. I completely forgot about Arteta's suspension, so that does worry me because it's going to be, getting possession against these guys is going to be tough. So if you take the kind of midfield passer out of the team.
Yeah, but you've got Rosicky who moves the ball quickly from front to back, and so I think
Yeah,
that would be a positive, and he will be completely fresh. He's had over a week off. He's had over a week off. I
So
think.
would you play him central then, Chris?
Yeah, Rosicky and Flamini with Ox
Jack.
on the right.
Yeah,
Ox
you
on
wouldn't
the
have
right,
Jack.
and Podolski on the
I
left.
missed that, sorry.
Yeah.
Is Jack fit? Does anyone know if Jack is actually fit?
I think he is. Yeah.
Yes, he saved him up, didn't he? Charged his batteries.
Yeah.
So no
That's not
Cazorla either, Chris.
That's not who I think will play. I think Podolski will drop to the bench. I think Cazorla will play on the left.
Yeah.
I think he'll play Wilshere I think he'll play Wilshere, and then on the right, I think he'll play Rosicky.
Yeah.
And Ozil.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But that's not what I would choose. But then again, I'm
What would
not
you choose?
paid. Right, Rosicky in the middle.
number 10?
Ox on the right. No, sitting.
Oh, in midfield, sorry.
Yeah, Ox on the right, Poldy on the left. But I am not Arsene Wenger. I don't have his experience. I don't have his knowledge or footballing brain, so I won't pretend to know what the best lineup of the team is. I just shout and scream and hope they win.
Yay!
Right. On that happy note, we're just coming to the end now, guys. So we'll go to any closing remarks before we finish off. Anything from you, Chris, before we go?
I'm not Chris, am I? I'm
Not
Carl.
you, Cole. I said
Sorry.
Chris, not Cole.
Nothing sort of major. I think the only sort of two things I really took from the weekend was that the support was fantastic yesterday. And okay, yeah, there was a little bit of a murmuring with 20 minutes in when we were sort of, you got that impression Liverpool was going to score and everything. But as soon as the goal went in, the crowd really lifted, and I really felt like there was a real togetherness yesterday. We all know that we've got the best away fans anywhere, in my opinion. But that home advantage, we've got the solidity now. We're keeping the clean sheets, and we need all the supporters behind us as well. Particularly going into a game like Wednesday, you just worry. And again, I really hope this doesn't happen. But if we do go behind, there's no disgrace to going behind to Bayern Munich at home. And if that does happen, it's just sort of a rallying call really to everyone to stay on side, because those players, they're human beings and they react to the supporters driving them on, and I think we can be the 12th man, to quote a cliche. And as you exactly just said, or as all of you said, these are the games that we fought so hard at Newcastle away last summer to get to.
Yeah.
We don't want to be playing Deportivo shopping trolley on a Thursday like a certain team up the road from us. And this is what it's all about. It's not about the players we're going to sign or not going to sign or the money we've got in the bank and all that. At the end of the day, it's about these sort of nights, big European nights against big European teams. And it's an opportunity for these guys to really make a name for themselves now.
Definitely. How about you, Benjamin?
Yeah, that's fantastic. We just got to keep this leg alive. Do what we can just to keep it live. So when we're going to the next one, we've got a great chance of going through. As I said, I'm a little bit nervous about it because they're the greatest football team on the planet at the moment. And if we can get a result out of this will be ginormous. It will be so important for morale, mentality, and what's the time? If you're going to the game, get to the game at, what was it, 25-2 for the red action thing? Does anyone know that? Yeah,
No.
Just get to the game, back the team, make as much noise as we can, and enjoy it. because this is what it's all about.
Absolutely.
And you, Scaramanga?
Two things. One, if Chris's Skype picture is anything to go by, he looks like a Sunday League Andy Carroll. And two,
I got more talent.
and two,
And it costs 40
with
million.
a passion, I absolutely detest mushy peas.
I think that's a good shout. That is what it's all about.
Yeah.
I actually quite like him.
Oh,
Thankfully, we
Can I
went
have
the whole
yours?
pod without mentioning that diabolical referee, but we did mention mushy peas.
Bum, bum, bum.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. This is one where the three of us are at, actually, aren't we, Chris? Ben, we'll all be there this time.
yeah.
So thank you very much, Chris, for coming on.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
And let's hope for some kind of result. A win would be wonderful. And Suburban Gooners out.
See ya.
Bye then.